On Sunday, we spent a few minutes talking about what I think is a very unusual teaching from Paul that we find in verses 3 and 4 of Colossians chapter 3. Let me read those verses for you to refresh your memory. For you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. The phrases that I'm talking about when I say kind of unusual are, first of all, that fairly common phrase, for you died. And then the phrase, when Christ, who is our life. So often we hear words like these and we think, yeah, well, that's good. That's good. And when we do, we overlook just how radical those words are. Radical and yet life-changing. Will you bear with me for a bit as I dig a little deeper into that wellspring of the Christian faith? If all we do is hear it and nod and then move on, I think we sort of miss the whole point. Two revolutionary concepts. First, Christ is our life. And second, Christ lives in me. Think about that statement from Paul. You have died. Christ is our life. Time and again, Paul uses the symbolism of baptism to illustrate that we have died to self, to sin, to the things of this world, and have been raised to new life in Jesus. How sad it is when that new life is so much like the old life. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Remember, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Well, that expression, for you died, implies that it has happened, and it has happened once and for all. It's not saying that we ought to die to self, to sin, and to the world. It says that our decision to follow Jesus has resulted in that state already, that we have died. It's what Paul calls being crucified with Christ. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. We read that Sunday. I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, Paul said, but Christ who lives in me. Christ lives in me. And Paul says here in Colossians, Christ is our life. How does that work exactly? In John chapter 15, verse 5, Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. Another and different metaphor of the same spiritual truth. Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. But look at the verse before that. He said, abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. Beautiful metaphor. Jesus, the vine, providing life, energy, and direction to the branches. That's you and me. Beautiful metaphor of Christ is our life. You chop off those branches, they wither away and die. But boy, those branches, when they're connected to the vine, that's when they grow. Metaphor again of you and me growing in the faith. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Without him, nothing. But with him, much fruit, our one glorious hope. So, you see, these words of Paul are indeed radical. Life changes. We can't just hear them, nod, and then move on. It's exactly what Paul meant when he wrote in verse 2 of chapter 3 from Colossians, "Set your mind on things above, not on things of the earth." Here are a few suggestions to sort of bring some practical help to all of this. If we're going to find our growth in Christ, who is life for us, we ought to set our minds on things above. A few practical ideas here. Turn off the television. Listen to Christian worship music. Read Christian books, even fiction. Read the Bible. Pray. And be sure to include some time in prayer to listen. I strongly suggest you delete Twitter from your phone. No kidding. You might be thinking, well, that's hard. I'll be out of touch. I won't be culturally relevant. Might even be thinking, Pastor Rich, I won't have any fun. I remind you the words of Paul. Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. Human philosophies, human values, which, remember, are persuasive, which, remember, seem to make sense, but they're not of Christ. Back in Colossians 2, verse 8, I'm reminded again of those stern words of Paul. Beware, lest anyone should take you captive.